Hey, what's going on, guys? Blacklisted Voice, episode 69. We are here with Amanda again.
Hello.
How's it going, Amanda?
It's going well. How are you, Kyle?
I'm excellent.
Good.
We just got done with a pretty tough training session.
We did, yes.
You've been slightly under the weather this week, so...
Yes, you probably hear it, and I apologize in advance if I cough in y'all's ears.
Yeah, right. Well, congratulations on making semifinals.
Thank you. Very excited.
Yeah, hell yeah.
Yeah.
Pretty sick.
Literally texted him at 4:07 as soon as the leaderboard was finally updated on Sunday, and I literally just said, Kyle!
I was not going to look at it. I'm like, I don't want to know.
And I'm sitting there for 10 minutes, just refreshing.
And then I got that text. I was like, oh, thank God. Yeah. I mean, you crushed that last workout, though.
It felt good about it, but you just never know.
Oh, yeah.
There's a lot of talented ladies in this region.
The blind leaderboard is, something else.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we're doing a fundraiser for T-shirts for you.
Yes.
By the time this podcast is put out, though, we will have advertised that. So
yes.
You can probably go to our link in bio.
It's probably in my bio at this point, too. Our stories, all of that.
Yeah. We have, I think we have 3 different shirts. I think we have a tank top, crops for ladies, and then another just specific blacklisted one. And then we have one T-shirt that is white that is specifically Amanda's T-shirt for semifinals. So those are all kind of on the same store, but all of the proceeds of that are going to cover Amanda's semifinals trip. So
me, I'm poor.
Literally, life of an athlete.
Yeah.
So if you guys want to help support Amanda, please check those out. We would love for you to purchase one.
They're really cool. Shannon, his girlfriend, designed them, and they're chef's kiss. So,
yes.
And lots of options. So
yes.
Fun too.
Yeah. So, sweet. Well, how? I guess let's kind of dive into things. Just we haven't had you on in a while, and obviously you kind of accomplished something that's pretty amazing in the sport. So, let's just kind of start out. Fill us in from last season after kind of you had your second sixth place finish 2 years in a row on a team.
Yeah.
What was kind of your thought process mentality, and then let's just kind of tell people how you kind of decided to come to get into going individual this year.
Yeah. I mean, right after semifinals last year, pretty fired up, being in 6th place for the second time and being the only 6th place North American team to not get the call. Darn it, we were at the only clean clean semifinal.
Yeah.
So I had a fire under me. I 100% planned on going team again and trying to keep a team together. You and Nicole both immediately after season were kind of we're out, but Logan and I had talked about keeping a team together and trying to find some other people. But then as the off season rolled on, it just didn't really happen. I just couldn't get a ton of commitment from people with it, and I knew that for myself, if I was going to go individual, just because it's a very different challenge and ball game and a whole different animal, I needed to be mentally prepared for that. I didn't want to be scrambling for a team, because I mean, our last 2 years kind of were pretty scrambly going into the open.
Yeah, man, it sucks because you have almost always 2 or 3 people that are super committed to it, but then trying to get that final commitment, and it's better to have it way out in advance so you can train forever, but it's just so hard to get that final commitment.
Yeah, sometimes. And I didn't want to be in that scramble situation again. Because I think had I waited until closer to the open, I probably would have been able to find a team. But I knew that if I was going to go individual, I needed to be mentally preparing for that. And you were already kind of programming for me I was going individual, because we had talked about that. So my programming didn't have to change much in that regard. But yeah, and so what TFX qualifiers maybe, or right around there is when October, November.
I think it was after the camp that we did over at Forge.
So November, because I think that was the first weekend in November, second weekend, and something like that.
Yeah.
whereas it was before the new year. I know that.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, so I just decided, the couple people that I did have committed, I just messaged them and I'm like, hey guys, I'm going to see what I can do individually. Because every year too, I never did the individual quarterfinals the last 2 years, but we would kind of talk like, oh, these workouts would be really good for me, and like, da-da-da.
Or we'd like do one and you'd be like top 50 or 20 in the workout. Be like, huh, well.
Yeah, and so it's like, I don't know, it's just kind of, I think, like my time to kind of branch off and really see where I'm at as an individual.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so I started doing some individual competitions. I did beach brawl at the end of September last year, and then I did in the elite division. You don't have to qualify for that one though. You just sign up. And then I did the qualifiers for TFX. Learned that I do not enjoy individual qualifiers.
For real.
Qualifiers as an individual is definitely mentally harder than, I wouldn't say any more physically challenging, because you're doing the same thing, like especially for TFX, the workouts are the same, but mentally going and emotionally going through it by yourself is
so you'd rather have the team to kind of like rely on.
I don't necessarily rely on, but like the camaraderie and the like this sucks together, and the like, oh, we all had little flubs here and there, like when you flub by yourself, you only flub yourself, like, and so it definitely just different, and I don't like it, but
do you feel like it's easier also, like there's less stress on a team qualifier because it's typically easier? Now, granted, we were like very close to TFX last year.
Yeah, TFX, I think we were the 9th out of 10 or something like that.
Second place at the comp.
I think it's easier just, again, in the, like, not like physically or whatever, and not because the team scene is very competitive, but I think, again, just easier mentally and emotionally, which just in terms makes it feel easier as a whole.
Yeah. Like you're the type, I think in general, it seems like you're the type of person that it becomes less stressed when they have like people to talk to and hang out with, and like, if you're doing a qualifier workout together with somebody, like you can kind of joke, and like even at a team competition you can kind of joke with them, talk to them.
I'm not really a lone wolf.
Yeah.
Like one of the TFX workouts last year, I did it with Nicole, Jamie, and and me. That was the third one.
Was that the row box jump?
That was the row box jump, and I absolutely just freaking did horribly in my first attempt, awful. And like I did, like, yes, I was upset, but I feel like I like didn't freak out about it, and I came back and I redid it, and I beat my time by like 3 minutes.
It was a lot.
It was a lot. I didn't really bad the first one. But then this year, there was just like a couple of workouts that I didn't necessarily feel like I did well on. It was just like I felt like I was by myself.
Yeah. Okay.
And so it just like, it was easier to internalize that and kind of let it get into my head a little bit.
So like when you're with a team, like how do you like, is it more of like an external thing that you're like verbalizing, or
I
like
think
when you're by yourself you just kind of like thoughts just keep running through your head?
Right, because I don't have anybody to like talk to about it. Like, because this year specifically, you were gone the first week of qualifiers, so it's like, and also we've talked about too, and there's multiple week qualifiers. At least for me, the first week is kind of like the first workout at a competition. Like, it's like you have to get the jitters out, and it's like the first workout jitters, and then because by the second week I was feeling much better about everything, and so
I think even by your retests, honestly, this year, because like they threw the gymnastics one out first this year, right? And you came back on Monday and did like, what was it, 30 seconds better at least on that one?
Yeah, and so it's just very different, because it's a lot more internalization. Is that a word? As an individual, than
make it one.
And it's today. Then because like with a team, you just have other people to bounce, like with the rowing and box jumps. It's like, okay, well, what can I do? Like you talk with each other, because you know each other really well too, and you know each other's abilities. So it's like, well, Mando, you could try this on your retest. So like where with you're just really forced to reflect, which is really great. But it's just very different when you have never had, because team was my first real, experience with competing in CrossFit in general, other than like small local comps.
Right.
So like the big stuff team was my one and only experience. So just kind of, we talked a lot about this with quarterfinals too, is just kind of learning the mental and emotional game of individual.
Right. Yeah. It is very different, and maybe this is like a side street we can jump down now, but like I think you did it the right way though, is where you went team and you got to learn a lot about the sport and a lot about these like big competitions. And then once you had the experience there, because also too, like you were still filling holes, right? And like it took us a good 3 years before the things that we needed to work on were good enough to be at a competitive level in the individual side of things. So like having the team to fall back on too with that was awesome, because now you're going to these big competitions, you're seeing how they're run, you're seeing the flow of everything, you're seeing like the little details that you don't get behind the scenes, like I need to be warmed up at this time, or I need to slow down my warm up, all these kind of like nuanced things that now when you go to an individual competition, it's going to be second nature for you.
Right. So, absolutely.
Yeah. So I think you did it right in that way, but yeah, definitely like it is a completely different mind game going individual than team. So,
yeah.
Did you kind of get that experience at Fittis? Like, were you starting to, like, what kind of lessons did you pull away from competing with everybody at Fittis experience?
Yeah, I had the in-person competition.
Yeah.
I think it's interesting, individual. I feel like, it's kind of some of the stuff you said, like getting warmed up and all of that. And there's like some camaraderie in the back, but not really, because you're competing against each other,
right?
And not necessarily that it seems like fake or forced, but it is like.
Would you say like it's almost like more intense?
Yeah, a little bit, and like you just kind of have to be within yourself, and there's some girls that I try. I'm a very friendly, outgoing person, and like even though you're my competition, like I'll still start a conversation with you, even
totally.
All that. And like there were some girls that were all about it and some that weren't, and you learn that, and then like you go with it. But definitely I think the biggest thing I learned at TFX was just kind of like we've talked about a few times, is like I really do belong with that group of girls. There was a lot of really strong athletes there, some semifinals, games level athletes there, and I held my own. I won an event.
Sick as fuck.
And so I didn't do as well as I wanted to, but you always learn something from a competition. Gymnastics and aerobics. Yep, that's like we've filled a lot of that hole, but that's always going to be a little bit of a hole. It's always going to be. It's not a crater anymore, though.
Yeah. I don't know if it was ever a crater, but it's definitely like you're on a much more even playing field.
Yes.
Sure. Yeah.
And, with competitions, too, it all depends on the workouts that you get a little bit. Like that run was a long row, and it's a little bit of a different story for me, probably a little bit.
Right.
But, just learning to trust myself more, too, because, again, with team... Again, like you do have your team to fall back on to fill those holes that you have. You don't have that as an individual.
Yeah.
And so, and there's a couple of workouts for sure that I felt like I could have pushed a little bit more in, and maybe been a place or two higher, because just trusting my ability and my skills, and I learned that I'm definitely capable of more than I think I am.
Yeah. And so was that kind of the mantra we were using, was you belong for TFX? Yeah. So can you kind of like, did you believe that before you went in, or was it like you had to kind of see it before you believed it?
Can my answer be both?
There's always going to be some doubt inside of an athlete's head, right? But I think for you, it was just like, you had qualified elite in Fittis experience before, but you still had never gone and competed there. You had done the quarterfinals workouts that you were like really good at and senior place on them, but you had never competed in a quarterfinals. So like I think for you, like one of the big reasons why I kept telling you that is because, and like why I wanted that to be your mantra is because like you qualified, you earned it, you belong there, you know.
Yeah.
But I think there's, to your point, yes, I think there's always going to be some doubt in an athlete's mind.
Yeah, I mean, because we've talked about this quite a bit, imposter syndrome.
Yeah, for sure.
Like, I know I'm good, but there's also this small voice inside my head that's like, you're not really that good. Like, yeah, you qualified for semis, but like, nah, not a big deal, even though it's like a really huge deal.
Yes, yeah.
And like, I've always been like, even, I'm a 3-time All-American softball player. And I feel like every season, so sophomore year was my first year that I was named an All-American. And like going into my next 2 seasons, like there's just this voice in my head that was like, oh, you're not that good at softball.
Yeah.
Like they don't make anybody an All-American, you know?
Right. Like you earned that.
Yeah. And so it's just like, it's this weird battle with myself where like Julie, my wife, will be, and like my friend Justine, we joke all the time about how I'm like super confident and cocky, like in a good way. Cocky doesn't always have to be bad. But like things like, because I think there was in the games one year, the announcers said something about Matt Frazier and they were like, what can't this guy do?
Oh yeah.
Or like something like that. And so there's been a few times where it's like, I'll do something that I didn't know I could do and I'll be like, what can't I do? And like, I'm very much like, I'm awesome. I'm like so great. But then like, there's this underside that like, I feel like I keep in myself, like outwardly I'm very confident and very like, yeah, I'm a bad bitch. I'm the best. I'm like, but there's always this little voice in my head that was like, yes, you qualify, but like, it's not that big of a deal.
Yeah.
And so kind of like battling that and kind of getting that voice out of my head because again, I know it's a big deal and I know like I belong there and I earned my spot there. And so, yeah, just kind of this constant battle of actually thinking and fully believing what I portray outwardly.
Yeah. So like, do you think having like the mantra like that is helpful and like repeating that to yourself?
Yeah, I think because we just kind of started mantras the last year and a half or so.
Yeah, probably about
a little bit.
Something like that. Yeah.
I think they've been really helpful because I think like it just gives you something to focus on and remind you, like, again, for a long time, it was you belong. And, it just reminds you that you deserve everything you've worked for.
Yeah, for sure.
You don't deserve anything. The sport owes you nothing, but, like, when you earn it, you earned it.
Yeah.
And, like, you worked for that, and, like, you deserve all the things that you've put the work in for.
For sure, yeah.
And so.
Yeah. So coming out of fitness, did you start to have a lot more confidence and, like, you were like, oh, shit, I do belong here.
Yeah,
like,
definitely. Yeah. I was like, bring on the open in 3 weeks.
Do you feel like that helped your training at all, or?
Yeah, I think so. I think it allowed me to like start pushing a little bit more on things. Like legless rope climb is a thing that has always been a kind of mental thing in my head. Like from West Coast, when every athlete has their moment of something. It doesn't necessarily. It's not necessarily legless rope climbs, but for a lot of athletes it is. Where I just couldn't get up the rope for my last rep, and my team took second to last place because I couldn't finish my work. And so since then, they've always been just like a mental piece for me where I must like, I suck at legless rope climbs. I suck at legless rope climbs. But then, fittest, I took 9th place in a legless rope climb event,
Legless rope climb and burpee.
And burpee, box jump overs, So, and so it definitely gave me some confidence in, like, that movement specifically, but just, like, kind of trusting what I learned there to just try new things and just and trust that I can do it. And even if I do fail over and over to trying new things, like, that's okay.
Right.
Like, I'm very much an athlete that needs just kind of touches on things, and I'll pick it up pretty quickly.
Right.
And so, like, not just even, I've always getting things right away, but being okay with failing and just learning and adjusting and figuring out how to get this movement or get this skill.
For sure. Yeah. Yeah. So we kind of like decided to train you through the open. And, the first week we hammered you pretty hard on Wednesday. And you weren't disappointed, but you weren't happy with your score. So like, can you take us through some of the mentality that you had? Because like obviously 2020 hindsight, but I think you did an awesome job being able to like come to terms with like my scores aren't going to be a reflection of who I am because I am, or the best me because I'm training through this. And can you kind of like describe how you kind of came to terms with that?
Yeah, I mean, every week except for the third week, I wasn't super satisfied with my score.
Yeah.
But I think like after the first week, and I saw this meme one time. I think I told you about it. It's like, I always feel better after I act a little crazy.
Yeah.
That's me. Like, sometimes I just need the moment, like, right at, because I always, like, I'm like, I have 5 minutes. Like, if I'm not, like, fully happy with something, it's like, I have 5 minutes to be pissed and sad and cry if I need to. But then after that, it's like, it's time to think big picture. Because you need to get those emotions out. If you never just release them, even if you're like, yeah, I'm fine, big picture, like you still have that in the back of your head because you just didn't get it out, you know? And so I think after the first week, part of it was you were all like, top 10 scores will be 201, and I got 197. So I had like a score in my head that I should have gotten to be a top 10 score, and we were a little off that week with our calculations.
The formula did not work.
But, so it was part of it that I had this like score in my head that I should be getting. But you and I just talked a lot about just big picture, knowing like, it's just, you don't have to place. And you don't have to be top 100 in the open. The open obviously matters because it gets you to the next phase, but you just have to be in the top 10%.
It's honestly just like, a check mark at this point.
Right. And I'm going to be in the top 10% unless I don't do a workout, you know? And so it's just like having to remind myself that like big picture, I'm training for quarterfinals. I'm not training for the open. I'm training to peak to make it to semis. And that, like, quarterfinals is really where the season truly, truly begins. And so, yeah, I think you and I after 23.2 also, we had to have a little chat because there was also running and burpees. I'm like, And so, because I always want to put forth my best performance and, I always want to be the best I can possibly be. And sometimes, especially when you're not peaking for that specific moment, I did give everything I had, and it just, on a different day or on a more fresh day, I definitely have more in me. But for the open, all that mattered was that I got to quarterfinals. And so we just talked about big picture. It's okay not to be satisfied, but you did what you needed to do.
And we, one thing that I think is a little bit behind the scenes too, and like, there is a confidence aspect to like feeling good about your workouts too. And so like we were planning on doing like an AM on Monday that was more aerobic work. Maybe I think there was some mixed stuff in it, but then the mixed stuff ended up being upper body pressing on that first day.
Yeah.
I know there's that thought in the back of your head, like, well, what if I didn't do all that? Like, would I, So like some behind the scenes stuff is like you did train through, but we even made adjustments during the open too. Like still keeping big picture in mind because part of the big picture is confidence going into quarterfinals. But yeah, we even made adjustments in the open too.
That's true. Yeah. Cause like, especially cause I've never actually competed in individual quarterfinals before. So I didn't have the last 2 years to be like, okay, well, this is where I was. So making sure I had the confidence. So I stopped training in the mornings on Fridays. And just did the open workout. Whenever I did it.
And it was like Friday afternoons or something like that.
Yeah. So because confidence is very important going into, especially like I said, quarterfinals when I haven't done that before and have no idea where I actually match up. Because, the TFX pool of semifinals athletes was pretty small.
Right.
I mean, there's some very good athletes that I beat out in those qualifiers, but like, in the grand scheme of North America East, it was a small pool of those athletes. So.
Yeah. It's always good to like have those kind of like those qualifiers under your belt and like those competitions under your belt, but at the same time, like, it can also just almost not mean anything too, but it is like a huge confidence boost going forward when you do what you did and peak for quarterfinals.
Right.
When you don't peak for quarterfinals, that's when it starts to not mean
Right.
as much, and you can't get as much data and confidence coming off of those things. So I think, one thing that's awesome about you is you do see like bigger picture, and you're able to kind of like be okay with things not being perfect in the moment, because later on down the road that it's going to pay off. So I thought it was pretty awesome to see during
Thanks.
the open. I don't know, what was that kind of like your big kind of takeaway or lesson learned from the open?
I think so, especially if I stay individual going forward. Even if I go back to team, it's just, even with team, it's all about big picture. It's getting to quarterfinals and just remembering what the end goal is. It's like any given training day. Like, yesterday didn't feel super great, but like, great, my season's not based off of yesterday.
Right.
Right. And so just remembering that, like, one day, one workout doesn't define you, your season, your ability. Like, there's going to be bad and tough days and like where things just feel hard and heavy. Like, that's what I said yesterday. Everything just felt hard and heavy.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. And especially too, like, also like thinking big picture, like, hey, this is a new change in my coaching schedule. This is a new change in my schedule. Like, might have a shitty day here too. So, sweet. So going into quarterfinals, then, what were you feeling?
Excited, nervous. I will say, like, there was, like, going into it to start, I was like, I'm gonna make semifinals. Like, I won't say there wasn't a doubt in my mind, but I'm gonna say that, like, there wasn't a doubt in my mind. Like, I fully prepared to make semifinals. And so then the workouts were released. I was like, cool, none of this is super scary for me. I like the GHD one. I was kind of, I don't know, like, I'm really good at the rower. We've been working on GHDs. These weird V-ups are in here.
Yeah.
Like, so there was a couple that I was kind of like,
this is interesting,
but I wasn't afraid of anything.
Yeah.
Where a lot of, like, sometimes I'll see a workout and I'm like start hyperventilating. I'm like, oh no, I'm going to be so, like, but there wasn't anything that scared me, which was pretty, like, cool. And then did the first workout, ring muscle ups with the wall facing handstand push-ups, and honestly felt good about that workout until I started hearing through the grapevine other scores, which I did not ask for.
Yep.
So at that point I was like kind of freaking out. I'm like, I'm out. I'm done. Like, there's no way. But you did a good job of kind of like talking me down, kind of, again, giving me perspective on, okay, this person that beat you, remember that, like, you just kind of had more information that, like, that wasn't a wheelhouse workout for me. Those strict, like, in 23.3, I made it through the strict handstand push-ups. I had 45 seconds left for the last barbell and smashed it and finished the workout. And there are some girls who made it to the last barbell with over 3 minutes and couldn't finish it. So, like, that workout, that first workout in quarterfinals it was a strict handstand push-up workout. It was a gymnastics workout. The squats there wasn't enough of them. They weren't heavy enough to actually affect much of anything. It wasn't going to slow those small girls down.
Right.
And that was, like, some good perspective that you could give me that, like, this was a damage control workout. And, like, we knew that, and it was by far my worst workout in the the quarterfinals. But and I know we had talked about, like, staying off the leaderboard, which I was, like, all on board for. But I think what happened, because then we did workout 2. That one went fine.
Which one was workout 2 again?
Crossovers.
Yes. Yeah.
That one went fine. I was a little bummed because I only had, like, 5 reps left. I thought it was only 2 or 3 or something like that to finish off the...
Sounded wrong.
I thought it was only a couple reps to finish off the last round. And so I was kind of like, gosh darn it. And so, like, the first 2 workouts, like, went fine, but just there was, like, little execution things that I flubbed up. And then, scores were due, the first set of scores. I told all the people close to me, like, don't text me my spot on the leaderboard. I'm not looking. and we came in to do workout 3, which was clean and jerk workout, which was like my wheelhouse workout, you know, and hadn't looked at the leaderboard at this point, got into the workout, had a missed rep on the clean and jerks, and still finished with a very solid time, but just was super frustrated because, again, it was just another like, there's no reason I should have missed one of the lifts, and I just, you know, had no idea where I was on the leaderboard and all this stuff, and we had, you know, another good big picture talk, or just like, you know, that was you've earned this pressure, you've earned this, you know, feeling like, you've earned this pressure is really what you told me. And then at that point, I did look at the leaderboard just to see where I was, and I think that's one thing we talked about is like, I didn't stalk the leaderboard. I wasn't sitting there comparing scores, but it just like knowing where I was at, which was outside of a qualifying spot after day 1.
81st.
90th.
90th. Okay. Yeah.
But it wasn't so far out that I didn't have a chance to bring myself back up with my strongest workouts coming up.
Right.
So I think because there's so much unknown with quarterfinals, just like figuring out those small things that you can, like, there's so much unknown and so much out of your control, and like just finding those little things that I could control and that I like that could just help me mentally was good. And we figured that out, that me just know it, because then I looked to see where I was at, and we decided that I was going to come in and redo workout 3 just to
I sat for like 2 hours on my couch and talked to like 6 different people. So thank you to everybody that I talked to.
Thank you.
But I like sat there forever just being like, do I send this message to her? Do I not send this message to her? If I send this to her, is it going to, and she doesn't want to do it, is it going to mentally like mess her up? And like somebody said to me, what's your gut telling you? And my gut was like, I need to ask her this question. So I sent the text message. So sweet.
Yeah. And I will say, like, when I first got it, like, basically the message was, like, you don't have to if you don't want to. Like, if you want to put the rest of your energy into these last 2 workouts, awesome. But, like, do you want to redo this workout? I think you need a win. I think, like, there's, you know, a couple of different reasons. And when I first saw it, like, my actual initial response, like, my initial thought was, like, no, I'm not going to redo it. I'm just going to focus. But then I sat and thought about it, talked to Julie, and like, then I think my response to you was like, let's do it.
Yeah.
Just so, like, like, let's do it. And, you know, beat my score by 8 seconds, something like that. So, you know, a good solid amount. And then from there, the execution, like, it was that kind of win that I needed.
It honestly, like, when you did that, it felt like there was just like a sigh of relief. In
like
the rest
a
of
weight lifted.
Yes. Yeah. And that's, like, that was one of the things that I said in the text message was I feel like we, like, because, like, you did miss, like, you missed the 3 handstand push-ups to start the workout, and then you were just kind of, like, a little bit of, like, letting that tumble, like, man, if I had hit those reps, I would have finished the workout. And then you missed the 1 lift and then you kind of had some trip-ups on the crossovers in that last round because you were trying to speed through them. And you're like, man, if I had just, you know, relaxed, I could have, you know, gotten done with that round. And then you missed the lift. So it was like kind of like they weren't bad scores, but it was like 3 things that were starting to like compound on itself. And it just felt like we needed to like, hey, this is a good workout for Amanda. Let's come in, let's execute, and let's get a win for the, like, at least get a win for the weekend. And I think when you did that, it was just like this, and like even coming in on Saturday, like the I hate this word, but the vibe. Yes. Just felt like so much better. Like everything was relaxed. Like it wasn't like a, hey, there's going to be a ton of pressure on you. And part of that could have been from the talk that we had the night before.
Yeah. And I did look to see where I was at. At that point.
Yeah. And I think like that was something that was like huge. And you know, you looking at the leaderboard was a huge learning point for me because it is, you know, during the open, it doesn't make sense to look at the leaderboard because it's like, even if you're like fighting for a qualifying spot, you're literally just going to be disappointed, you know. But with something that happens so fast, it's more reactive. It does make sense that you like looking at the end of those windows is like.
And for a different athlete, it might be different. But for me, just kind of like just know it, because, like, again, just having no idea where I was at.
Mm-hmm.
It was like, I could be in 200th place that right now with no shot of
Yeah.
making it.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
like, not that I would just be like, what's the point? I obviously would give everything to all the workouts, but, like, you know, just be like, okay, I'm not out of this. I have my strongest, like, my weakest event is out of the way. Like, so, yeah, it definitely was just, like, a huge weight. And from there, like, workout 4 and 5, yeah, I couldn't have executed them really any better.
Yeah.
I don't think.
I mean, you crushed those.
Yeah.
yeah.
So.
Yeah. What was workout 5 again? Why can't I not remember?
The rope
these?
climbs.
Yes. Yeah.
The bar muscle ups, chest to bar.
Yep.
Yeah.
And we kind of came in with a little bit more of a conservative plan on that one too, and I think, I think it worked out really well. I don't know. Honestly, I don't know if we would have changed anything on that.
I don't know.
So.
Your grip was gonna blow up on those last 2 or 3 rope climbs, no matter what you did, and you didn't want to blow up earlier than that.
Yeah. So what like kind of emotions were like? 4 o'clock hits, you're like sitting there refreshing the leaderboard.
For like 10 freaking minutes, CrossFit.
Yeah.
I cried immediately after I saw it.
Yeah.
Like, it was just like, oh, I'm gonna get emotional now. It's just like all that hard work that I put in over this last year. Like, I had no idea.
Yeah.
Like, truly where I was gonna be at, and like I said, going in, like, because you never want to count yourself out, right? Like, I had every ounce of faith in myself that I could make semifinals. But again, the East is a really hard freaking region.
Yeah.
And so I just, I cried and texted you right away and called my siblings and my mom and my friends. And, it was just like, God, and like another big sigh of relief.
Yeah.
Given it was another week before it was official. But
right.
I was 55th. So I was like, you know what? Unless I get, like, a zeroed out score, it's not like I was 60 or even 61, 62.
I think you're, like, 55th with, like, an 80-point cushion to 61st or something like that.
And so I would have had to get some major penalties, I feel like, in order to slip out of that. So it was, like, I felt pretty safe with it, too. So I was like, whew. And I climbed a few spots throughout the review process.
The evaluation process, yeah.
No penalties on this end, though.
yeah.
But yeah, so it was just like, dang. And then it was like, all right, now we got to keep working.
yeah. I wish I had some like more data points to show like just how difficult this like the East Division was and to qualify out of the East, because the only data point that I have is like if you were to compare the East and the West, there would have been 18 guys in the West that wouldn't have qualified, and there would have been 11 women in the West that wouldn't have qualified if you had combined both regions. So like, it doesn't do it justice, but it does give you an idea of how difficult it was to qualify out of the East. And like, I've been in this sport now for 10 years, and any person that has qualified out of the East this is honestly one of the most impressive things to have done in the sport. So testament to your abilities. But it was extremely impressive to qualify out of this division as well. So
Thank you.
Well done.
Thank you.
So, but after quarterfinals, we've kind of come up with a little bit of a new mantra. Can you talk about that a little bit?
So my new mantra at this point is no fear. Because, I, at this point, obviously have proved that I belong. And if I don't believe that now, well, I probably won't ever. So, so finding no fear. Because we know that some weird stuff is probably coming up in semifinals, some stuff that I've never done before, and some stuff that I'm maybe not that great at. But just going in with no fear and just, like I said, never counting myself out. Like I talk to people, and people outside of the competitive world don't truly understand. People are like, all right, we'll see you at the games. And it's like, okay, well, it's not that easy. Like, it's not just like...
let me just wake up tomorrow
and
make it to the games.
And so, but I'm not counting myself out because you never know.
Right.
And so just going in with no fear and just really giving everything I have to my training for the next 6 weeks. I think it's 6 weeks at this point.
Yeah.
And when we get there, like, yeah, I'm going to be nervous. I'm going to be anxious, but like I always am, no matter what. And like we always talk about, if you're not anxious or nervous, you don't care.
Yeah.
So I would hope and think that even the best in the sport are nervous going into competition.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
But so yes, I'm obviously going to have that. But luckily, I feel like I've proven that I'm an athlete that kind of excel. It's not the word I'm actually looking for, but like I thrive off of that anxiousness. Like that nervous energy and anxiousness of a competition doesn't necessarily it doesn't negatively affect me in competition. Right. It like fuels me.
Yeah.
And so just going in, no fear, giving absolutely everything I have to each event, each training session up until the event, and where the chips fall, they'll fall, and we'll see what happens. We'll see what happens.
Yeah. This is kind of one of my favorite times for an athlete, when they first qualify for something or first go to something, because there's not a ton of expectations you can have on it besides going and giving your best effort, which ultimately that's all it comes down to is being able to give your best effort. But then when you kind of get some experience, there's going to be some expectations that you set. But this first year for everything, I think, is always just the most fun, because it is just the least pressure you have, and you can just go into each workout hey, I don't have anything to lose on this. I'm not gonna have any fear about tackling this workout, and I'm just gonna go and give it my best effort, or we're just gonna go and give it our best effort,
Yeah.
So I'm looking forward to seeing what happens down there. Me and too. Just going and having fun.
And it's in person. God bless.
Yeah.
Get me into that in-person competition.
Yeah.
So
What do you think the difference is between online qualifiers and in person? Is it just the unknown, or
unknown? I feel like I always push a little harder when there's somebody pushing in a lane next to me. Somebody who really thrives off of that competition. And qualifiers, I'm in here doing the workout by myself.
Yeah.
You know, even if I have a time in my head from somebody else, it's different.
Right.
Than having them next to me and pushing me. Physically pushing me in that moment.
Yeah.
TFX, I was 13th out of 15 or something like that. And then I finished top 10.
Right.
There,
Yeah.
So I always perform a little bit better in person. So I'm excited to, just go and.
Yeah, for sure.
No fear, give it everything I got.
So Tristan's birthday workout next to you while you were cheering workout 5 wasn't
That's
the
what
same.
it was.
Yeah.
That's what it was. That's why I executed so well.
Yeah. Tristan is one of our members, or one of the members' sons here. He turned 11 that day or something.
While I was doing workout 5.
Yeah. So, well, I'm looking forward to it. I don't know. I think there have been a lot of people that have said they're coming down, so we'll see what happens.
Come to Orlando, everybody.
Yeah. How do people find you on Instagram?
Amanda_thighs.
And we are putting t-shirts out for you as well as just a reminder if you've made it this far into the podcast.
Yep. T-shirts and yeah.
Yeah, I think we're doing something. If you're in the area, I think we're doing something at 404.
Yeah, CrossFit 404. There's going to be a little fundraiser competition on April 29th. It's a team competition, $50 a team. Message me on Instagram if you have more questions and want to participate, and I can get you set up.
Yeah, for sure. Well, thanks for listening, guys. Obviously, give Amanda a follow. See kind of some of her training sessions coming up here for semifinals. They're not easy.
Or hit me hard.
So, and if you guys watch on YouTube, please go and follow us on Instagram, blacklisted.hq. If you could, like and subscribe, and be on the lookout for those t-shirts. So, catch you guys next time.
Bye.